This is happening. And so that was a pretty defining moment where in that spot, you had kind of short time to process which path you're going to take, like survive, cry, or in our case, we said this moment going, gosh, we have no idea if this is going to last for a week, a month, a year, a decade. Is this a new ice age coming? But our mission isn't changed. So how do we serve in this? And so it became this moment rally cry to the team of, I'm a big believer you can either be a victim of circumstances or you can be a creator. And I believe God created us to create. And so even though we didn't know what to create, we're called to still fulfill our mission. And this is now a challenge, not an oppression of what we do. And so it became this big rally. And it also became an interesting test for me and God. I was only about a year or two into really practicing Sabbath in a true way. I always kind of dabbled in it. Mm-hmm. And that unleashed like just crazy days of, inbox blowing up calls. What do we do? What do we go next?
If you're going to ever be tempted to break Sabbath, this is the time to do it, right?
So I was driving home at the end of that week where we said, we're not shutting down. I reached out to the mayor. I actually did a respectful plea and said, hey, I know what your ordinance edict is, but our business supports entrepreneurs all around the world. Would you please grant us an exception? And by God's grace, he issued an exception that within 24 hours, one of the few that got him in the city. And so I told the team, hey, we're going to still rally. We're going to figure these things out. We're going to adopt technology and innovation, all this kind of stuff. I remember driving home what would be the beginning of my Sabbath, preparing in my head how I'm going to tell Jackie why we're not going to have a Sabbath and why I'm not going to take the day off. I'm sitting in my driveway, staring at the garage door, and I literally sensed God in this fatherly way, kind of like put his hand on my back and go, hey, you can choose to do that. You can say the world's ending and you just got to hold it all together. I'll be okay. God's like, yeah, I'll be fine. He's like, but you'll be doing it on your own. And I remember sitting there staring at the garage door being like, can I really navigate a pandemic, pivot the company, and take a Sabbath? Like, that's crazy. And God's like, you wouldn't be in charge of me. And it's like, but God, like, but do you understand? Like, this is, and I'm like, no, like, I'll be fine. Like, we're okay. You're my son. Like, it wasn't a righteousness, like,
whichever way you want to go.
Just Sabbath is for you. And if you don't think you need it, go for it. And so I took that first Sabbath in March of 2020, and people emailing and calling and like, hey, what happened? You stopped responding. And I came back the next day and the world was still ending at the same pace it had been before.
Mm-hmm. The news was still bad.
News was still bad. It was not a bad dream. But I also had this peace like, okay, God's going to do something in this. We're going to walk through this together. Mm. And so, interestingly enough, we were going through culture studies right now. That was probably, that 3 months was the best time of employee engagement and unity, because we just rallied with this sense of, okay, what are we going to do? How do we, cash was going down. We're doing the classic, hey, in a few weeks, I'll issue paychecks for everybody, but if you could just not all cash them at the same time, that'd be great. My budget that was so beautiful, we did, we were doing 3 new versions every couple of weeks of, well, that ain't going to work, and that ain't going to work. But there was this, we are going to serve in this moment. Mm. And we don't know how the ending will be, but we're going to lean into it. And our whole mission grew during that time. Mm. And so it was learned a lot around the mindset you have walking into a crisis. I'd read Henry Cloud's book, The Boundary for Leaders. Mm-hmm. He talked about even the 08-09 crisis when, stock market's horrible and everyone's losing money. There were certain brokerages where people gained customers. There were stockbrokers who got new accounts. Mm-hmm. And he was like, why is it? Like, well, when the sky's falling everywhere, then it's not unfair. And how do you create value in that? And so you either choose to be a victim or you choose to go, hey, I'm going to stand up and we're going to serve in the middle of a storm. And so 2020 was a crystallizing experience of that for us.
Do you, the way you've described it, it sounded like by necessity, you had to focus. You had to choose very narrowly.
Yes. With inadequate data on a crunch.
And in some ways, it was probably a gift that which is difficult for guys like you and me. We appreciate data.
Absolutely.
Right? But you had to go, from what you've described so far, you had to go to the core of who you are and what you believe, and focus very narrowly on those handful of things.
Yep.
Sabbath is non-negotiable. The team has to unite because we're not going to make it otherwise, right? Probably transparency went up, but from the sounds of it, like, hey, the checks are going to be issued, but it's pretty transparent for most companies.
Yep.
Great leaders are able to focus. And it sounds like what you're describing is that not by choice, you had to focus.
Yeah, in retrospect, it's a cool case study. In the moment, it is this series of kind of like, what do you believe and do you live out of that? And I think the honesty of, and part of leadership is believing something so deeply, and if you don't see how you're going to get there. And so there's lots of questions he also had no answers to. So people are like, well, if we do this, will we be okay? I don't know. Like, if we do this, will we not have to do layoffs, or will the mission grow? God did not give me that headline of here's where everything's going to be. We just knew the next step to take. And we're like, we're going to be faithful in the steps, and the steps don't guarantee us immunity or invincibility. But it doesn't, it will command blessing, and we know God will be leading us through that. And so there was this kind of freedom of taking just the right next step towards this determination to keep doing the mission we were assigned to do, even if we didn't know what the next curve was going to be. And that actually became kind of our strength in the time. Was a lot of the industry kind of pulled back and was just waiting to see, like, let's see where the weather goes. And we stepped into the storm, served leaders. You were in the middle of all that. And then began to be the go-to folks for navigating kind of a moment by moment, what is the current reality, to where even, the White House reached out and a bunch of things kind of bloomed just because we were standing up in the storm. And it was a powerful moment for me in the moment to be like, all you can do is rely upon your first principles. And then in retrospect to go, that made all the difference. Like, if we had waited, it wouldn't have worked.
Speaking of retrospect, what are some of the things that you and or your organization have kept that was birthed in that time? Anything come to mind?
Yeah. So it
obviously your resolve for Sabbath is still strengthened, right?
Yeah. That got doubled down. It's like, well, if I can do it then, I can do it anytime.
Yeah.
It certainly accelerated our rate of adaptation, innovation. A bunch of the technology band-aids became technology permanent things. It led to how we, I got acutely aware with every line item of my budget in that process, and the team did. And you start doing things like, hey, you found a way to save $20. Great. You found a way. We were like, well, why wouldn't we just kind of approach each year's budget with that level of like, let's just go down to the studs and say, this is what we did last year, need to be done this next year. And it made us further keep looking at where, like, what are the risk factors that could come and how do we mitigate those pieces? We laughed about this flu being on the number 10 list, but the reality is we were also being casual about some of the 7, 8, 9 topics. And so doing some more stress testing and war gaming of the business that's become normal. I'd say for our size, we'd probably play more future orientation, more scenario-based kind of testing of our plans than many businesses would, just to know kind of what our leading indicators would be that would require an agility or a pivot play.
Was there anything that you felt like you gained or enjoyed during that season that's been lost? So I heard a ton of people during COVID say, I'm really enjoying the extra time with my family, or I don't miss the commute to work and back.
Sure.
Right. Anything like that you felt maybe is already waned just a couple of years later?
Yeah, it's funny. That December, things had gotten a little more calm. We knew what we were doing at that point, and the world hadn't ended. We're like, hey, this isn't the apocalypse. Did a Christmas dinner with my family, and I remember asking the girls, hey, like, how would you describe this year? And my youngest went, Dad, this is the best year ever. And I went, that's not what I was thinking. But why would you? Not many would say that. Why would you say that, sweetie? And she said, well, think about it, Dad. You didn't travel. We played a lot of board games, took a lot of walks. And then her next point was really interesting as well. She said, and this has to be your favorite year, Dad, because we prayed more than ever about things and God answered so many prayers. This has to be like the number one year for answered prayers. Doesn't that make it a great year, Dad? And I thought, what a great child perspective.
Yeah, out of the mouth of babes.
I was like, could we not have a year where I'm like desperately depending upon God? I was like, but then again, that's what made it so sweet.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.